name is Dennis Forney. I'm the publisher of the Cape Gazette, and it's my privilege and honor to welcome everybody here today on behalf of the Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce for this 12th Rehoboth Beach Candidates Forum. Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center provides many services promoting business, tourism, and civic responsibility. While business organization and political leaders may not always be on the same page, there's always a common goal to find the best solutions. So today we're going to have a nice little forum. Going to have some questions, hear from these wonderful candidates who have put themselves forward to serve our lovely community. And we've got a number of questions to go through, and I'm going to give you a little sense of how this is going to proceed. We have a timekeeper today, Chip Hearn. He's a member of the board of directors for the Chamber, owner of the ice cream shop and Peppers. Chip is an experienced and a veteran timekeeper, not to be ignored lightly. Candidates will be given a 20-second warning. Chip will hold up the paddle, followed by a stop indication, and that will be red. So, it says, give a warm welcome to myself and to Chip. And everybody here. So here's the way we're going to operate. Of course, we have the election coming up on Saturday, and these three candidates are seeking a 3-year term as a member of the Board of Commissioners. So we're going to hear from them today. The Chamber has prepared 10 questions, and they're going to be choosing from these questions in a random fashion, 1 through 10. What we're going to do is have each of the candidates in alphabetical order give a 1-minute introduction of themselves. And after that, we're going to start with the questions, and they will also go in alphabetical order, and then we will rotate. So it'll start with Patrick choosing a question. He will have a minute to respond. Then Bill will have a minute to respond, and Tony will have a minute to respond. Then the second question will be drawn by Bill, and so forth and so on. And we'll go through until we come to the end of those questions. At the end of those questions, then we'll open up to the audience for questions from the floor. So let's see. I think that covers about all of it. So we're going to begin with the introductions, and we will begin with Patrick Gossett for a 1-minute introduction. Patrick.
Good morning. Thanks to the Chamber and all those for hosting this forum. I think this is always an important part of the election process. Many of you know me, many familiar faces out there. Just a little background. This is my second term serving as City Commissioner. Previous to that, I served on the Planning Commission for about 11 years. And I hope that the voters will judge me on my experience and the record of accomplishments, which include designing and implementing the public input process for the Comprehensive Development Plan, being a key author of 2 of those comprehensive development plans, writing and passing the codes to enhance our neighborhoods and prevent overbuilding of our neighborhoods, constant support of the business community, and also leading the effort for preserving the health of Silver Lake. When you're a candidate, it's kind of easy to say, well, I want the best for Rehoboth, I want to preserve the neighborhoods and the character of the city. But my record of service and action, I think, shows to the community what I have accomplished, and I get results of what I do. That's why I ask for your vote on Saturday.
Thank you. Bill Sargent.
I've been a resident in this town for about 20 years. I've had my own business for about 30 years. I've been on the Board of Adjustment for 10 years and recently been a commissioner. This town is, needless to say, a great town. But there are problems. There are things to do, and we'll discuss many of those. You'll hear them. I think that with the experience that I've had with them and with the knowledge that I have, I hope that all of you will vote for me and return me to office so I can continue on these things. Thanks.
Okay. And Tony Sharp.
Good morning, everybody. I am absolutely honored to be here. I'm Tony Sharp. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, and I moved to Rehoboth full-time just this past spring of 2011. I've been fortunate enough to be able to retire here. I bought my property back in 1999, and it's been a wonderful experience ever since. I spent over 4 decades in the private sector, and what I hope to bring to the city of Rehoboth is a fresh perspective, well-honed strategic planning and financial skills that I think are badly needed in our community, and I am ready to serve, and I ask for your vote on Saturday.
Thank you, all three of you. Now, we have 10 questions here that have been prepared by the Chamber of Commerce. The candidates have no idea what these questions are. They're simply numbered 1 through 10. Patrick, you're going to select the first one, whichever number you feel lucky to. And I'll read the question to you, and then you have to respond, and then each of you will also have an opportunity to respond. So 1 through 10, what would you like?
I'd like number 13, actually.
Yeah.
How about number 3?
Number 3, okay. The city's comprehensive plan states a goal of wanting a city with less cars but not less visitors. Do you see the expansion of the park and ride and destination station center as a way to achieve this?
You know, I've been following this destination station for quite some time. Working for the American Association of Museums for about 10 years, I have a lot of insight into museums and science centers, what this specifically is. And I think this is going to be a great draw for the community. But as wearing my commissioner's hat, I do think that we need to certainly look at the impact that the traffic is going to have on the entrance to Rehoboth. Working with the city, working with the county, and working with DelDOT to develop a plan of how traffic management will best help us and to manage the situation. We certainly want to draw more visitors to Rehoboth, but I think getting out ahead of this and helping us with a traffic management plan is the way we need to go. And we need to envision Rehoboth with more people and less cars.
My reaction is that destination station during the summer may not be as large a draw as it could be because the beach is so important. But I think where destination station really has the potential to add a lot to the visiting in the city is in the off-season. When I've heard about bringing bus trips in to see the exhibits that are going to be available, I think that's going to be a really nice draw. And the more that we extend the shoulder season, the better that is for our season. And you know, it would be, I can't see that it would hurt in the summertime. It's going to bring some more people in. I just don't know how many. But I think destination station, I just wish it good luck. Thanks.
Tony?
When I think about all the challenges that Rehoboth is going to have, not only what's going to go on out on Route 1, but what happens in our city, I think about it in a broader context. I think about it in the fact that in Rehoboth Beach of 2020, which is less than 7.5 years away from us, we're going to have to thoroughly understand the county's plans for everything out on Route 1, plus we're going to have our own long-term strategic plan of how we're going to handle the influx of cars that are going to come our way, because what we don't want to have is an experience for our visitors where they turn away from Rehoboth, because it is not a quality experience. So I think destination station is certainly a piece of that pie, but more importantly to me, it's the broader picture.
All right, we'll go on to the second question now, and I just want to mention 2 things. We're going to work on finishing up here by about 10:45, and we're also going to be videotaping today's entire exchange, and the chamber will be posting it on its website, correct? Question number 2, Bill, your choice.
Well, you just said it.
3.
You just said it.
Oh, you want question number 2?
Number 2, yeah.
All right, go ahead. What do you see as the greatest threat, and what is the greatest benefit you see to the vitality of the downtown commercial district? So, the greatest threat to the downtown commercial district, the greatest benefit to the vitality.
The greatest threat is always the economy. You know, I hear tales that we have more visitors this year than we perhaps ever had before, and yet some retailers tell me, you know, people aren't spending quite as much. So I think that truly the economy is the biggest threat. I think fortunately, we have an attitude in town from residents to the commissioners and what have you, which really recognizes and welcomes the fact that Rehoboth would never be the city it is without the vitality in the business community. So I just pray for the economy to pick back up. It will in time, it always does, but I just hope that everybody can survive these difficult times and that we return to normalcy in the near future. Thank you.
Tony, greatest threat and the greatest benefit?
You know, I think threats and benefits are always a moving target in our society today, as fast as everything moves. But one of the things that the Comprehensive Development Plan drew out was that as we want to have a vibrant business community, we also have to make sure that our residents and our businesses are never rivals to one another. They should always be working together, and I think there are some very specific ways to do that. For example, having our businesses and our community come together pre and post season to talk about what are the threats, what are the benefits, and where are we going in the next few seasons, not always just in the moment.
Thank you. Patrick?
I too will have to agree. I think the greatest threat to Rehoboth or any beach community this time is the economy. We can't control it, but in having conversations with business folks around town, hotels seem to be doing well, restaurants seem to be doing well, but the retail is kind of flat. Of course, flat is the new up in today's economy, I think, so that is helpful in a way. But I think the greatest benefit for Rehoboth Beach is our beach and our boardwalk. I mean, without those two elements, that's really what draws people to Rehoboth. Without those, you know, the city keeping the beach clean and well protected with lifeguards, newly refurbished boardwalk, and that's clean, and trash is taken away, what have you. Always having entertainment throughout the season on the bandstand. Those are all elements that the city draws into, coupling with the business community to make it a sustainable destination.
Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the third question now, and we'll start with you, Tony. What number would you like?
I do not gamble, but I believe 7 is a lucky number. Is that a true statement? Let's see.
With regard to noise, it has been a year since the city hired an enforcement officer. Is it your view that this has helped control the noise? And would you support retaining this position? So we've had an enforcement officer for a year. Has it helped control noise, and would you support retaining the position?
I have heard a lot in the last few weeks about the noise ordinance and how the city has dealt with that. So I would certainly be one who would want to understand fully the benefit of the noise ordinance, to understand what are we getting out of it. Are we improving the quality of our lives, or are we just an irritant? And so from that respect, I would want to understand if we are actively doing some kind of feasibility of whether or not that position continues in the short or the long term, and whether or not it's a benefit to our community or a hindrance.
You know, as you had mentioned, this is our second full year with a code enforcement officer, Bobby Edmonds, who I think is doing a great job. This is really an educational process, and I think looking back at the results over last year versus this year, there have really been fewer complaints and violations that have occurred. So we have some actual data that we can look at what's going on. And I think the vast majority of business want to play by the rules. And this, with Bobby Edmonds out there as a code enforcement officer, he's the one that kind of checks on those ones that happen to step out of line, and educates them that they're kind of, you know, pushing the edge there a little bit, and allows them to educate them what's going back on. You know, the rules are created to keep a good business environment, and I don't think it's fair for the responsible businesses to have to put up with the bad apples in the group. And our goal is to have a very great business environment, and one that has treated all in fairness. I think that's what we've done with Bobby Edmonds.
Thank you. And Mr. Bill?
Boy, it'd be sure hard to disagree with Patrick on that. I think Bobby Edmonds has done a superb job. I think his role is wonderful. I think, as Patrick said, the businesses really want to comply, but it's so easy to let the noise go up a little bit, or whether there are other infractions. And if he just comes along and his presence there is a calming one. And having walked with him at night and seen the effect and the way he deals with people, I think it's a very nice way. It's not a policeman on the beat. It's kind of a friendly person from the city, and I think it's had a very good effect on the city. And I fully support continuing his position.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the fourth question. And Patrick, your turn to select one. You've got everything but 2, 3, and 7.
Let's go for double digits, number 10.
All right, that'll make me work.
Paybacks or something serious. No.
Okay, this is about wheeled vehicles. With regard to any wheeled vehicles, bikes, scooters, segways, etc., would you like to see reserved space for their parking needs? Would your plan require removal of current vehicle parking spaces, and would you place a fee on the parking? So should we have reserved spaces? Would that require removing current spaces? And do you think they ought to be charged for the parking?
Well, it's a very interesting question because the city has begun experimenting exactly with that. We have pulled scooter parking spaces into application. We've now added, I believe the figure is 43 spaces, scooter spaces on Wilmington, Martin's Lawn, and also on Baltimore Avenue. And as an experiment to see if this is something that people will utilize. And just driving around at night and morning, riding their bikes, walking, they are being used. Currently there is no fee for those because we want to encourage people to come into town, leaving their cars out and bringing scooters into town. We've had problems obviously with scooters being parked on the sidewalks, and that's not safe. So my thought to this is, as the commissioners have decided to put these parking spaces into place, monitor them, see if they're working, and use that information as a develop a long-term plan over the winter of how to handle this for next season. I don't think you can have a knee-jerk reaction of charging somebody one day and not the next. So using that data that we collect this year, this season, to influence a plan for next season about charging it or so.
Bill?
Well, I think that we need alternate modes to the car. People who need cars to get to town, but once they move around, bicycles, scooters are really increasingly important, and I think that does have a favorable impact on the business because that frees up some spaces for a few more people to come from downtown. And when you look at the wheeled vehicles, in essence, you're getting a little higher density of people, which is good for business. On terms of the specific, should we give up some car spaces for scooters? I don't have a problem with that, but I think that once you begin to do that, you probably need to consider charging. That's an open issue. The commissioners will be facing that one, but in theory, I think it probably makes sense to say if it has a motor, let's charge. And particularly if we begin to take some of the car places. I mean, this town lives from parking revenue. It is so important. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. And Tony, what do you think about this?
I think this is a great example of needing to take a holistic approach. When the scooter issue came up this year, it was almost as if it took people by surprise. And so there was a rush to put together a pilot program, is what we have now, to test how this can work. But I think in taking a step back, I fully support the pilot program. But you've got to take a holistic approach of exactly how this is going to work over the next 7.5 years. Because by the time Rehoboth Beach 2020 is upon us, we have to have an approach that will take care of the influx of more bicycles, more scooters, the potential for more cars, and exactly how this is all going to work so that there's clarity and certainty about it.
Now we move on to our fifth question, and Bill, you get to choose this one.
Is 5 available?
Let's see. It certainly is.
Okay, you said it.
All right, number 5. This will be on water quality. Given that we have just been named among the best in the nation for beach and water quality, how do you plan on handling any possible negative perception that the ocean outfall could create?
That is a very difficult problem. There's some people who are so against anything in the ocean that it's going to be very difficult. The truth is that just about 15 miles south of us, we've had an ocean outfall there for 40-odd years. It has never, ever had one single failure, and that's what we'll experience. Today, the water that goes into the canal is almost to drinking standards. I mean, you wouldn't die if you drank it. You wouldn't want to, but it's got a little bit of nutrients in it that require that we go into the ocean. It will have an absolutely minimal impact on the ocean. And this is just something that people, I think, will in time learn. Most people will not be concerned at all about it. There's a few who will scratch their heads, and they need to learn the facts. And the facts are there if they want to. If they want to oppose it, they're going to oppose it for a while, but I think it's going to come.
Thanks. Tony?
I would be a proactive, I would take a real proactive approach on this, to have an educational campaign to go along with it. You know, our community, as we've already established, we thrive on our Best in Nation class when we are visited by the Travel Channel, and we get all sorts of wonderful publicity. So we would need a very strong educational program to help all of our residents and visitors to understand exactly what our positions are and what the facts tell us about the ocean outfall. The other piece of that, I would want, even as a part of our community, I would want to understand, are there any contingencies that would ever need to take place if there was any kind of problem with that particular project. So I think a proactive educational program to cover all of the pluses and the potential minuses would be absolutely necessary.
Patrick?
You know, I'm very proud of the fact for 2 years in a row that we've received the 5-star rating for beaches. Only 11 other beaches in the nation have received that. And I agree that it is an education process. The ocean outfall is, there, as been mentioned, there are 3 of them in Delmarva right now. All of them at least 20 years old. Ocean City has had one, as Bill said, for a number of years, and today they're sponsoring the White Marlin Open, which certainly is in the water, and they haven't had any problems with that yet. You know, a little technical education process, that distillation rate is 10,000 per 1 when that water comes out from it. It's a mile offshore, it's 40 feet below the surface of the ocean, on the ocean floor, so it really is a non-issue in many regards, but it is an educational process. You know, letting the people know about that information, and also, you know, we have capacity at the sewage plant to hold 2 days, excuse me, of sewage if there is a problem with the pumping station, what have you. I think it's the economical way to go, and I think it is an education process that we need to take to our advantage.
The 6th question. Now we have 1, 4, 6, 8, and 9, and Tony, your choice.
Let's take number 1.
Number 1, all right. Pull this one out of the hat. What do you believe is the number 1 complaint aired by visitors, residents, or business operators? Out there campaigning, what's the number 1 complaint you're hearing?
I can answer that question because it's been in my ear for the last 5, 6, 7 weeks. And what I hear is congestion, congestion, congestion. I hear it from the business folks, I hear it from visitors, and as well as residents. And the answer to that is we've got to have a long-range plan deal with the more of everything that Rehoboth is going to be experiencing. Mayor Cooper even mentioned the other day in a meeting that Rehoboth is going to be getting more of everything in the next few years. So we have to take a very assertive and proactive approach to dealing with all types of congestion so that we understand what we'll be facing and how we're going to measure and effectively deal with it.
Patrick, number one complaint.
You hear at this time of the year that is congestion, it is parking. Rehoboth had a parking problem for as long as anyone can remember. I think there are postcards from the 30s that show parking problems out there. But I look at it as a double-edged sword. If we didn't have a parking problem, we wouldn't have people here supporting our businesses, supporting our community. So this is a problem that doesn't exist 12 months a year. It's a difficult problem to manage because it is cyclical. Folks have talked about, as long as I can remember, building a parking garage. Well, if we were to build a 200-car parking garage, that's at $5 million estimates right now. That's 200 spaces would add 10%. Right now we have 2,199 metered parking spaces in the city. So to add 10% to our capacity for parking is $5 million, which I don't know that is a wise investment for a 90 or 120-day period. We have instituted a residential parking permit to encourage residents to park at their homes and walk into town. We've instituted Park Mobile for those that do park to be able to make it more convenient for them to park. We've experimented with the introduction of scooter and parking spaces. There's more to be done, but we do have made some inroads into the congestion period.
Thank you. And Bill?
Well, I won't call it congestion. What I'll call a major problem is I can't find a parking place. But it only happens a relatively few days out of the year. I mean, certainly the 10 Fridays and Saturday nights of the year, but so much of the year, you can find it. You don't find it maybe right in front of the shop you want to go to or the restaurant you want to go to. And it really is a manageable problem. It's not something, I'm aware of how much it affects somebody because they got to walk and drive an extra block to find something. But, I think that's just kind of a manifestation of the health of this community and how, as Patrick said, how good it is for the business community that we have people here who want to come. I mean, the worst possible thing I can imagine is having lots of parking. Thanks.
All righty, back to Patrick. You're going to select the first one. You've got 4, 6, 8, or 9.
9.
During the last hurricane emergency, which included some evacuation of the business community, there was complaints of mixed messages in the chain of command. How do you believe the city could best communicate the plan of action to be taken in the face of a hurricane?
Hurricanes and major storms, we've also been affected by a major snowstorm here a number of years ago. I think you have to look at those types of issues all as one. An evacuation plan, the commission has just reviewed the emergency management plan for the city, developing a leader or point contact person for those messages to be delivered, how they should be delivered. We have a loudspeaker system that can be heard throughout the city, the use of email alerts. But I think the key is really looking at the emergency management plan that we have in place and allowing those people to take their positions as needed. It is a plan, it is in place, and just have to work towards getting that plan out to the community and understanding what really needs to happen during these. People look to their radios and they look to the Weather Channel to be a part of that and getting that information out to telling people what to do and when to do it.
Okay.
Dennis, there may be mixed messages, but when a hurricane is here, it's a very confusing time. The governor issues a mandatory evacuation for anybody within 3/4 of a mile. That includes virtually everybody in Rehoboth. But there's a lot of reasons why people might want to stay. And was it really mandatory? Was it not? I mean, that's clear. We were not ever given an order, clear everybody out. This isn't like calling the National Guard in to clear something. So I think that when we have problems, something like an Irene, we're going to have mixed messages, and it's a fact of life. I think that with the emergency plan that we put together, we're learning how to coordinate all of our things better and coordinate better with the county and the state. You'll never be perfect when a natural disaster comes. I think we handled Irene pretty darn well.
Tony?
I went through that hurricane myself here, and I can honestly say I was a bit unsettled with how it was handled. So from a positive standpoint, I think Rehoboth can learn a lot of lessons from what happened last year. And the first thing I would want to champion would be a comprehensive communication plan, utilizing every vehicle that is available to us. And if those vehicles are not up to standard, they need to get that way, and get that way in a very, very fast order. Because I wonder if a storm comes later on in August or September, etc., are we going to experience the same thing? I also believe that as I look at the newsletter that we get each year, that's a starting point to make sure there's clarity around what are the steps our community should be taking if and when we have an approaching weather event that we all need to be particularly aware of. So, comprehensive communication plan and utilizing every vehicle that we all are aware of in this day and time.
4, 6, or 8? 6.
You're gonna take 6. All right?
If I counted.
I was thinking about not even asking that.
Oh, well, you want me to? Your choice.
This is number 6. When there is a hotly debated issue someone is going to lose, what do you think is the best way to follow up with the defeated party?
I think, let me just talk about the commissioners. This has been a fascinating several years. Most of our issues have been unanimous, and yet everybody has brought a very different viewpoint. Some people want to do things fast, and they're very impatient. Others want to go really slow, really be convinced. But I think the best possible thing you can do is have a good working relationship where people are really comfortable talking and they're comfortable making compromises, and the hotly debated doesn't become personal. And I think that I must say is a wonderful thing about the commission today. And I think you know, not letting it get personal in the first place is probably the most important thing to us.
Tony?
I think outreach and openness in our government is something we should all strive for. When you have an open, fair, and transparent government, I think we all have a better sense of comfort and security that everyone is working on behalf of Rehoboth. And one of the things that I would like to see Rehoboth do is take a look at all of the folks who've been appointed to committees and make sure that all of the folks who want to contribute are being given an opportunity to contribute. So I think open, fair, transparency, and outreach are really important to create positive working relationships so that you can have tangible results that everyone can gather around, even if it wasn't your idea to begin with.
Thank you. Patrick?
Well, I guess I can be a little bit Pollyanna in these regards, to be honest with you, is hotly debated issues. I look towards, there's really not a winner and loser. You bring the points from everybody that has a discussion, that has a dog in this fight, if you will, and try to work through collaboration and consensus. Something that I learned many years ago with my 20 years with Hilton Hotels is that very simple phrase, ladies and gentlemen, respecting ladies and gentlemen. Everyone's ideas, everyone's thought are important to bring to the table, and you need to respect those. But there is certainly a priority of how how that data and that information is used and comes forward. And that's what I use in my practice, is building consensus and trying to look at the information presented and how we can best pick from all of that information and what really is best to work to solve the problem.
Okay, very good. We'll go on to the ninth question. Tony, this will be yours. 4 or 8?
4.
All right. If you could change or improve only one thing in downtown Rehoboth, what would it be? You've got the magic wand, you can change one thing, what do you change?
If I had a magic wand, and if that was something that all of us could do, I think the one thing that I would change would be the congestion. I heard a business owner the other day talk about, and it surprised me that he came at it from this perspective. He talked about the congestion as being so fearful that someone is actually going to get terribly hurt on Rehoboth Avenue. And that stuck with me, that would be not a good thing, and it would be a mark on our community, that we may have been able to see that coming. So if there was one thing and you had a magic wand and you could solve it instantly, that would be it for me.
Okay. Patrick, what would you change?
That's a unique question, I think, from the standpoint of, we all talk about the preservation of the character of Rehoboth. So change is kind of an odd way to look at that, maybe. But I think that the key to any change is communication. And one of the things that I have proposed to bring forward in the next budget is a chief information officer for the city. And that's the communication tool. To educate our business people, our residents, our visitors about the safety on the streets, whether you're walking, whether you're riding a scooter, whether you're riding a bike. The issues of safety in the city, of protection of when you can ride a bike on the boardwalk, the aspect of the festivals that go on, when to plan your trips to here. Maybe you can come in the off season for a little more entertainment, these types of things. So I think it's not change as necessarily, as my daddy used to say, the only things that don't change are fools and dead men. And I think that it's communicating that change in a proper way that can be used by our visitors and our residents and our long-term citizens.
Okay. Bill, how about you?
Well, every one of us wishes that somehow the laws of being injured could be affected, and that somehow this could be a very safe town. When I see young children riding on the busy thoroughfares, I mean, it's horrifying. And I'm not sure I can change those laws. I'd sure like to. But I think, in the world of theory, that's what we'd like to do, is to know that somehow visitors who come here, who sometimes leave their common sense at the bridge, could be a lot safer. And so that's my wish to your theoretical question.
And the final question is number 8, and Patrick, we'll start with you. You'll like this one.
Oh dear.
Do you believe that the implementation of the new parking system, Park Mobile, we can just make this up for you,
Okay,
has been successful, and would you support continuing the Park Mobile option?
Well, I really don't know a lot about Park Mobile. I've been a strong supporter of that since the day one. I think it is an incredible system. It allows our visitors, our guests, to, as I said, sit on the beach and put more money in the meter, which I think is a good thing. They don't have to come back and carry a pocket of quarters. Same thing at sitting at dinner, having dinner, and your meter runs out. You can add money to the meter right from your table. I think it also allows us. There are many other aspects that this Park Mobile system can supply to the city. The database, it has potential of allowing us to have parking permits. You can buy and print out a parking permit from your home, so that we can eliminate that extra stop in the city. This can also be used for rental licenses. There's a lot of potential in that. So I think this is our first step into, as some people have said, the 21st century or online purchasing or what have you. It's a great opportunity, and I think it's been received well by the community, and I want to see it grow.
Bill?
It's a great first step in introducing a whole new technology to the city. And it probably is a starting point for many other things. In the very short term, I can tell you this, that credit card collections last year and credit card collections this year are virtually in a dead heat. I really expected Park Mobile to have a surge because it affected a larger portion of the city. And you know, I'm not sure I understand why. Maybe in this time of kind of economic tough times, people are just naturally saying, well, quarters aren't that bad. I suspect it's something like that because our take on the traffic is up. But nonetheless, the Park Mobile is a fantastic start.
Tony, what do you think?
Yes, I would want to see it continue, but on a broader scale, technology improvements are moving so fast, I can hardly keep up with them. I would like to understand more about where is it going in the next 3 to 5 years, etc. Because my vision of Rehoboth Beach 2020 is one that it is, we have a charming, unique community, but at the same time, we are very forward-thinking and we're doing the right things to have our experience of living here being top drawer.
Okay, now we have an opportunity to hear some questions from the audience. And we ask that you state your question clearly. You keep it to 1 minute. That you think about the fact that it's going to be a question and not a statement. And you can direct it to one or all of the candidates. So who'd like to kick us off? And then they'll each have 1 minute if they want to respond. They'll have 1 minute to go with that. Yes, ma'am.
Where is the distribution center located?
You mean the destination center?
Destination.
Okay.
Destination center.
Carol, why don't you answer that? It's a Chamber of Commerce project.
All right.
The project is scheduled to be built on the park and ride facility, the current park and ride facility. It would, if built, it will add additional parking spaces there. And it is on 1.75 acres of the current approximately 10-acre site. It's over the line onto the Del Dow Park and Ride site as it currently exists.
And you know where that is out there opposite Jungle Gym?
And what is the cost of using it? In the day, I assume, 8 hours, 10 hours? What is the cost?
What will it be at that time? Well, that will be a state
What is it
decision what it
now?
would be.
What is it now?
You know, I'm
No,
not
I
sure
don't
I
know.
know what it is right now.
Couple
We
dollars
can't-
a day or something.
$7 for the day.
$7 to park at the park and ride and use the bus system for the day.
Would it be helpful to see that the use of that bus are encouraged? Because I live on State Road and I frequently see these buses coming in empty or 1 or 2 people. And it seems to me there's plenty of room for people. Why don't they use them? And that would be a big help.
How about the,
That is an excellent question. The city does subsidize that bus for employees in the city, so that as a city employee, or either a city employee or employees that work at outlet or the what's the word? Retail shops, that's the word I'm looking for, they can ride the bus for $1. I think it's a matter of convenience that we are, and it's on the record at times, can be a lazy society. Would rather park right in front of where we want to shop, or be right there, as opposed to drive our car to the bus, get on the bus, and come into town. It's an education process, and it's a retraining process of people, and that's a problem that all of us have. At this point, I don't know how to solve it. If you build it, will they come? That's the question.
would either of you like to respond?
Well,
Trying to
I'll
get more
add-
people using the buses?
Yeah, I'll just add this. I think that the state decided many years ago that with not necessarily asking what's going to be the demand, can we make this profitable? They just said, we're going to put a bus system in, and it's grown. My understanding is that over the years, it does grow a bit by bit. Whether it's particularly profitable, I doubt. But it's, you know, the state has decided that that's a facility that we want to have. And we certainly do benefit in that there are many people who could not afford to drive in and park somewhere, but who can take advantage of the park and ride facility. There are even foreign students who ride their bikes in and then take the bus in. So it's used, you know, I guess we all wish it were used a little more.
Tony, any thoughts on that?
I would like to see more integration into a comprehensive communication plan of what are the options, how to use them, how convenient it can be with the goal in mind, if it's part of our long-term plan, to get more people to use it, leave your car out there and come on in the city through the bus system. So to me, it's a matter of education, education, education.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is for all of the candidates. You've talked a lot today about the congestion downtown and the concerns with that and the influx of people. In conjunction with that, as a commissioner, how would you work to preserve Rehoboth as a small town as it is, and to make sure it would not become too commercialized and on its way to being the next Ocean City, Maryland?
I'd like to take that. I really appreciate that question, because one of the reasons I came here is for the unique charm of Rehoboth Beach. This is a very unique environment, and someone recently referred to it as the Carmel of the East Coast. I'm not sure how we can really live up to that, but I think it should be our goal. So for me, the comprehensive development plan that was developed years ago, that has had so many thousands of hours put into that document, that's our blueprint and our guidepost, really, to keeping in mind that if we want to keep our community and have a vision for where we're going in 2020, we're going to have to work very hard to make sure any of the recommendations that have not yet been acted upon, that involve our lakes, that involve our quality of life here, that we are getting about those very, very quickly and making them a high priority.
Patrick, do you want to address that? Can we
Yes.
become too commercialized? How do we avoid it if we could?
Well, I think that unique character and charm of Rehoboth Beach is why people come here. The beach, the boardwalk, and that. And in my previous time on the commission, working to write the ordinances to help preserve the character of Rehoboth Beach and the building footprints of the house, also being an author, participant author in both of the CDPs, understand what we really want this community to be. And being as a convert, not being born here, being a convert to move here, you kind of have stronger opinions about that character. But I think it's a larger issue that we also need to look at, that we're affected not only by the city itself, we're not a silo. We're part of a county and we're part of a state. So working with Todd Lawson, the newly appointed, hired county administrator, and also working with state folks to really look at the comprehensive plan of how it's going to maintain our character. It's just not our little silo. We've got to look outside and be communicative with those people and make them understand why we're so special and need to stay that way.
I think probably the key thing that prevents us from being an ocean city is zoning. It was about 40 years ago when some of the high rises began to build along here, and the homeowners came together and said, hey, we got to stop it. We don't want to become an ocean city. And I think through our zoning of controlling the floor area ratio, the setbacks, and what have you, that we're extremely alert. And I think there isn't a commissioner who would dare run without saying, my number one priority is to preserve the charm of this wonderful city. And I think that if there was a weakness somewhere, it's going to get spotted, and we'll never become an ocean city. We got too much to preserve.
Okay. Tony, just one little comment. I was on the West Coast recently, and people were saying that Carmel will start to become the Rehoboth Beach. Okay, any other questions?
I was going to say that, I forgot.
I'm Sally Foreman, president of Solar, as you all know, but others here may not know that. So it won't surprise you that my question relates to the lakes. And just brief background, in 2010, we initiated a meeting with the Secretary to start improvements to our lakes, specifically Silver Lake, and the priority was to dredge the west end, which residents have been complaining about for years with no action, and also it would improve the lakes. We've made a lot of progress. We have bids. The state has committed $200,000 to that project. Solar created a task force that included Mayor Cooper and Commissioner Mills. To my knowledge, this issue has never been discussed at a commissioner's meeting, and we're at the stage where we do need Rehoboth to contribute. The fill-in at that end of the lake really has come from all the silt that has come from those large drains within the city. So my question to you is, why has this not been discussed at a commission meeting? And the other part is, how do you see Rehoboth contributing to this project?
Alrighty. Why don't you start, Bill?
Okay. It has been discussed. It should have been discussed a long time ago. There's no question about that. Let me just say from my standpoint, the people that I visit on the western end, I see a huge setback, and I was never aware of the level of the water. Unfortunately, Silver Lake was a forgotten stepchild of the city. I think at long last, there is a tremendous awareness of what needs to be done. I'm not sure when the dredging will start. I know that the city is willing to contribute a healthy amount of money towards that, and I understand the state is debating which methods they should use, and there's a lot of technical issues of how to do it best, but it can't happen too soon. I mean, that lake is a precious resource. Fortunately, the one thing I'll add is that the study that we've just gotten from the Planning Commission says the lake is really not, from an environmental standpoint, any worse than it was 30 years ago. That's nice to know, but the silting is terrible. The runoff of, oops, sorry.
Was that runoff or run on? I appreciate you putting that in my humor. Okay, Tony, what do you think about Silver Lake?
Since I'm not a current commissioner, it's hard for me to address part of Sally's question, which is, has it or has it not been discussed? But it is unconscionable to me that our community has relegated our lake to a stormwater management pond. That may be the case. However, when you characterize the treasure of Silver Lake like that, I think you diminish how it is featured in Beach Life magazine, how the iconic gazebos are really representative, and they happen to be on our City of Rehoboth website. So the way I feel about Silver Lake is that had the comprehensive development plan not languished for years, we would be in a better shape today. So taking that comprehensive development plan and making sure items are done and completed is extraordinarily important.
Patrick, thoughts on Silver Lake?
Sure. One of my first actions of coming back on the commission in January was to charge the Planning Commission to develop a report about the health of Silver Lake. It's been a languishing problem for a while, but this is an action step that I took to get it moving. The report was produced by them this Friday. The commissioners have the responsibility to read it. I've also, at the workshop meeting, we put together a joint meeting, the Planning Commission and the Mayor and Commissioners, so that the Planning Commission can present the report. It's not just in your inbox, read it, and move on. I want this to have the educational process that it truly needs. And I think that then it is up to us as the city commissioners to review the report and develop review the report and the recommendations, develop those recommendations into concrete action steps. We do have the $200,000. I know the city is committed to committing funds to that. There's an estimate of $300,000. We're talking with the Secretary of DENREC. That number can go up and down a little bit, but I will do all my power to bring that health of the city lake, the Silver Lake, back. And if it's sediment removal part of it, that's good.
Another question. Paul?
Back to the question of the destination station. Assuming that the chamber can raise the money through corporate grants, state grants, whatever, to build Destination Station, and I think they're in the process of doing that over the next few years, what can the city do to promote Destination Station and the mass transportation hub that it's going to be?
And we'll start with you on that one.
I'm really glad that you, Paul, that you asked that question, because when I think about how Rehoboth is going to have to function in the next few years and become part of a larger, more around us, it's central, I think, to a well-thought-out communications plan. And what I mean by that is you really take a hard look at who you're talking to, who's your audience, what you want them to do as a result of the information that you're giving them. And I think by taking a moment and really focusing on how that education is planned out and done, you know, it's really funny that we all have a sense that Destination Station is coming, but maybe even right now we don't have top of mind a lot of the facts that would be important to us. So I think when you think about a large communications plan on a large project, you put all of those issues into play.
Patrick?
I think this is a perfect opportunity for planning for a partnership between, as it currently exists with the Chamber, but also Destination Station and DelDOT and DART buses. It's an education process, not just that's isolated or solo here for Rehoboth, but to get this information throughout the state. It's a comprehensive plan, communication plan, to put a transportation plan together. One of the candidates for State Senate is also speaking about public-private partnership with transportation throughout the state, which again is a perfect opportunity to help get this information out, to develop a plan, see that it works, put it in place, monitor it, evaluate it, and change it. To have a, if you will, free parking garage built out in Destination Station is a wonderful thing. We need to know how to manage that.
And Bill? What the city can probably do is keep itself as healthy as possible year-round, so it's part of the draw to Destination Station. The publicity of that is probably not the city's responsibility. It's the Chamber's, who does a marvelous job of promoting the wonderful aspects of the city. And so I would expect the impetus for public publicity to come from the Chamber. But I think as long as we have we've made it easy for restaurants to be open, for hotels maybe to offer deals to busloads. I think it's the whole city can respond in a favorable way that will complement Destination Station. And assuming it works, that's what I see happening. And I see that, I don't know what the city would do specifically to help that process, but, if it's a go, then we're behind it. And we'll do whatever we need. If we got to change a law here or there, we'd want to do it. Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask all the candidates, if you believe the city acted properly in issuing the construction permit for the house on Silver Lake, and do you think the Board of Adjustment made the right choice in choosing not to hear the appeal?
Patrick, you're up.
Okay. Based on my knowledge of this situation, I think that the information that was presented to the building inspector at the time of her decision was an accurate and proper decision. There's always what ifs or additional information that come after the fact. But I think that issue, in my opinion, was handled correctly. Board of Adjustments Bill may be able to address it a little more than I since he served on it, but I think they went through the procedure to manage an appeal to the board. And again, following the rules that apply to everybody to treat everybody fairly, that was the decision that was made.
It would have been, to me, it would have been nice if the Board of Adjustment had have reviewed things and said, okay, we'll ignore the time aspect and had affirmed the building inspector's decision. But as Patrick said, I think from all the results we have, hey, it was right. But let me say this, based on what I knew of my friends at the western end, did I have any earthly idea that there wasn't a substantial setback? I mean, when I realized that, oh my goodness, by turning a house sideways, you could build a house within 6 feet of the lake, I must say, I'm sorry, I didn't know about that a long time ago. That, you know, it is what it is, but it's a darn shame.
Tony, you're right nearby there, what do you think?
I wish you could go back in life and change many things that have happened. I think we would all do things a little differently. What bothers me is an open and transparent government, in my opinion, would have provided an opportunity for all sorts of additional information to be vetted. And in the absence of that happening, we have the situation that we currently have, like it or not. So you can't go back and change it, but going forward, it is a situation that I hope teaches Rehoboth a great deal. And if I were elected to the commission, I would be very committed to making sure these kinds of things do not happen in the future, and we can't have excuses that we didn't know. And we can loop all the way back to the comprehensive development plan of years ago, that had it been acted upon, that situation would have been different from the get-go.
Got time for a few more? Yes, sir.
This is a question to the two incumbents. I've heard Tony speak a lot about planning and how she plans to make that a big part of what she does in terms of getting elected. And I was wondering with the two of you, in terms of having been on the commission before, previously and also now, what element of planning do you plan on bringing to this current commission that in the past has sometimes been somewhat questionable in terms of how they look forward versus reacting to things? And I'm wondering, if you get elected, how are you going to interject some planning in terms of the current commission?
This one's for Bill.
Okay.
Start with Bill.
Tom, I have to be frank with you. There's not a commissioner who doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about things, and that's what planning is all about. I don't believe that a lot more formal planning that tries to go way ahead makes sense. Businesses used to do that. They used to draw 5-year plans, and heaven knows I worked in a lot of them way back when. The problem is things come up, things change, and what you want to be is sensitive to where things are changing. You want to anticipate where you can, but this idea that somehow we can draw up a plan that's going to solve our future problems, I think it just doesn't work.
Patrick?
I think the plan in hand is the comprehensive development plan. As I mentioned several times, and I'm very proud of the fact that I have been an author of that. One of the things that back on the commission this time, and it brought forward at the workshop yesterday, is I would like to initiate a meeting, perhaps the October or November meeting, workshop meeting of the commissioners, for each year annually, that be the exclusive agenda item for that meeting, to review the comprehensive development plan. For the commissioners to review it, to figure out if you want to pick out your top 10 priority items, then put those together and see what they are. But that would be a plan to move forward. But you also have to allow to be, if you will, quick and nimble, because things come up in the city that you can't foresee. So that if you have a lock-in step plan, you've got to have some flexibility in there. So it's a balance, it really is. But you do have to have a plan going forward. And I think the comprehensive development plan is that. We need to use that in our planning process.
Tony, this question was directed to the incumbents. Is there anything further you'd like to add to it that hasn't already been said?
Brevity is one of my strong suits. And I think on this one, I do very much believe in planning. I talk about it all the time. And it absolutely must be balanced with a nimble and flexible ability to turn on a dime and do things that you have to, but at the same time, it does not negate the need for a long-term strategic plan with an accompanying financial plan to go with it.
We have time for a couple more. Anybody like to throw one out there?
I was just thinking, a few things, we talked about the scooters, for example, that we're seeing a tremendous increase. They also bring a lot of noise, which, and a lot more scooters are a lot of noise. And I think that's an issue that needs to be faced. And the safety, the little scurries or the things that have a canopy on top that people ride on the boardwalk that are terribly difficult to maneuver, it's appalling. We talked about safety of children. You see a bunch of kids and one parent in one of these scooters, and they're coming down the boardwalk, hell-bent on going God knows where. It's a wonder we haven't had some terrible accidents. But what could be done about that to maybe discourage them from the boardwalk, but where can they go?
All right. Bill?
Well, I think what you're talking about is the four-wheel bicycles. Those aren't scooters per se.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, and those are pedal
And they're
powered.
almost impossible to maneuver.
Yeah, fortunately, they don't go very fast.
Well, I've
but-
seen a lot of people try though.
Yeah, I know,
They really are.
they do, and the commissioners have had a discussion as to at what point in the day would it make sense to not allow any wheeled vehicles on the boardwalk. I'm probably a little more conservative than others. In other words, having once rescued a grandchild from a speeding bike, I would favor maybe a little earlier hour. Others say, ooh, a lot of people really enjoy it, and it's an open
I
issue.
realize that.
Tony?
I'm really glad you brought that up because I think it's a broader issue. I think it's part of the whole that we've been talking about. But from my house, I can see the Surreys going down a one-way street the wrong way, and I can also see the cars coming where they cannot see them around a corner. And I sit there and I just wonder, how long is it going to be? And you're exactly right. There's possibly a couple of parents and little ones in those Surrey. So what I would put on the table is these are the kind of conversations that have got to take place with reality, that this is what is going on. What are the levers that we can pull here in the city that would give everyone a better sense of comfort, including myself, about that issue?
Further thoughts on that, Patrick?
The Surreys are quintessential Rehoboth. It would be like, if we banned those, it would be like the boardwalk without dollies. But I think that the commissioners are currently working on the pedestrian and bicycle plan, which address these issues. It is a well-constructed plan, has a lot of options in it that the commissioners are going through at the present time to review, try to evaluate the bike paths that we've put into place, the signage that we put into place in the city, the scooter plans, scooter parking, this type of thing. So there is a plan that exists, trying to evaluate it at the present time, see what works and doesn't work. I will agree with Bill that the Surreys fortunately don't go too fast, even though they try to make it that way, but maybe the people have eaten a little too much pizza, can't get it going as quick as they but I just, it is something certainly to manage, but I just don't see Rehoboth without the Surreys.
We have time for one more. Yes, sir.
I'll admit to having a selfish interest in this question, but I'm wondering if each of you could comment on your view on the idea of the waterfront development along the canal near the museum with the water taxi service, et cetera, and whether you see that as positive, negative, what's your views on it?
Okay, Tony, we'll start with you on that one.
Richard, I'm glad you brought that up because it's been in the papers, and going to some of the commissioners' meetings, they are actively talking about it. And from where I sit, I think that looking at the feasibility of that is the right thing to do, to determine what are the challenges, what are the threats, if any, and what would the infrastructure need to be in order to pull off a project like that. And what do we get out of it on a long-term basis? you know, looking at it short, medium, and long term. So I think the city's approaching it as the right thing to do, to look at it, to make some thoughtful decisions around it, and then as part of a longer range plan, how does it stack up with other priorities? We're already looking at the possibility for a new city hall. So when you put all of your priorities together, just like we have to do in our personal lives, you have to make a choice. What are the must-haves, nice-to-haves, and manage all of that and balance it at the same time?
Okay. Patrick? If you go back and review the CDP, one of the things that is outlined in there is the enhancement of the canal for our canal side park. And if you dig a little deeper in there, you'll find it referred to as the canal connection. That's something that, actually a phrase I coined when we were writing the CDP. I think it is a great time to expand this and explore it, whether it be a useful taxi tool or a tourist attraction or an environmental attraction for eco-tours. It's something we need to evolve. The city is currently committed to do a geotechnical survey of the canal bank to see if it can even sustain the dock there. Once that it comes back to us, whether yay or nay, then this is the time to make the next step decisions. But we have to look at that. You know, capacities, how are the boats going to go up and down? Do they pass in the night? Where do they get fueled? Who's going to manage it? Who's going to maintain it? Where's the liability? Well, you know, the devil's in the detail, but those questions need to be asked. Okay?
It's really a tough one. So many things can be started on a small scale. This, unfortunately, to really begin with a canal requires $1 million up front before we really have anything implemented of size. What I ask myself is, oh, we've got 3,000 taxpayers in this city. Would I face them and say, folks, based on something that we really don't know whether it's going to work, I think each of you should pay $300 bucks? I'm uncomfortable with that. And so somehow I wish that I had the confidence that the canal park would work. Because remember, it's competing with a beach that's so close. So I don't know. I mean, this is one that is going to take a lot of thought and a lot of thinking, and I'm trying to keep one open mind about it. It would be wonderful to have another recreational facility, but would it work? I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'd love to be.
Very good. We're fortunate to have such high-quality candidates who are so interested in the city that they want to put their time in for it. So that's a nice round of applause. And thanks always to the Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce for putting on such an excellent forum and having it so nicely organized and orchestrated. It goes along smoothly, and we have covered, seems to me, the waterfront. I can't think of any.
Good pun.
Yeah, I didn't try on that. But I can't even think of the 800-pound gorilla that didn't get asked today. So very good. I think we're good. So Carol, we all set?
Thank you
Thank
very
you all
much.
for coming out.